So, last time I made a video on a bunch of cancelled superhero games. Specifically the ones I look forward to, or saw, or still see the potential in. This time with Star Wars kinda hitting off a weird, high note, sort of. Like The Rise of Skywalker don't got a good reception, and that'll be an interesting topic, but it's been making me think, cause while I found missed opportunities in the sequels, let's just say I found some missed opportunities specifically in games. Specifically, 20 freaking Star Wars games that didn't make it. Now we got EA, which any games they did deliver were a loot box nightmare. Looking at you, Battlefront. But back to the point. I'm not going to go through the laundry list of 20 games because that'd just be tedious and time consuming. So to make this simpler, I'm going to specifically focus on those that, to me, held the most promise. So the way this works is that I speak of the information of the game and in production, what it was like and how it evolved, and then I follow up with the potential that I think it had. So introductions aside, let's get right to it. So to start with, we have the Darth Maul game. So LucasArts was working on a Star Wars game called Maul, or should I say, Maul, or Battle of the Sith Lords, following the release of the Force Unleashed games, which are still fresh on our minds since it basically plays the same. A fully Sith edition was the new outlook. A new perception that, as you would expect, followed everyone's favorite Sith Lord, Darth Maul. An interesting take on his life before the Phantom Menace, training under Sidious. At least that was the first idea, before it was changed to sometime after he got chopped in half, survived, and became a clanker.
He makes an awful lot of clanking.
He is part droid.
Alongside his brother Savage Opress, his brother essentially appeared in the Clone Wars, so we can assume this was set around the Clone Wars time period. But this shift didn't change when Lucas appeared on the scene and gave Maul a girlfriend to replace his brother. Perfect replacement. Now, this is where it gets tricky. You see, she only exists in Legends as the alternate events during Luke's Jedi Temple in the original expanded universe. And people don't like that. But to be fair, those aren't canon, to be honest. And Lucas basically wanted to retcon her into a canon version of Maul. Now personally, as a weird and random idea as that is, I think it's kinda cute. I can say that I don't ship them at all, but I mean look at them. They're both Sith, red, they both have tattoos. Just look at the chemistry. But I digress. This never happened, but looking at the signs there was a lot of intrigue. Many of the Sith that we've never seen before, or at least that's what it appears to be, despite the rule of two and all. Some new troopers and some cute diagram on how their armor functions. No idea why that'd be important, but cool. Just all in all, the concept art, the textures, the beauty of it. Looking back on the gameplay, we can also see that not only does it play like the Force Unleashed, but he was fighting Mandalorians, or specifically Death Watch. Because they're not real Mandalorians, right? This is a real Mandalorian. But I digress. With only having bits and pieces of information to go off, Lucasfilm's in a very tenuous state. The patchwork story ended up being discontinued and the project shut down thanks to Disney. Gotta love Disney, right? I understand Darth Maul being a little overexposed lately, but it's a shame because Darth Maul has been a prominent figure even just before the events of The New Hope, amassing an underworld army before his inevitable demise, which, bringing up the underworld connections here, goes perfectly into the next game I want to talk about. Next we have Star Wars 1313. Now this game was set and full of promise, in that it possessed a completely new terrain, and by new I mean it literally touched on the underworld of Star Wars. The senior questionable districts. The game would have taken a role of the nameless bounty hunter here, going down to District 1313, the underbelly so to speak, of Coruscant, and subsequently being attacked in the middle of it, if the trailer is anything to go by. The gameplay reveals a sort of cover shooter game with a lot of parkour climbing physics like you would find with Nathan Drake in the Uncharted games. This nameless bounty hunter had what it seems to be a droid companion. And supposedly this nameless bounty hunter, this guy would become subsequently killed off. This nameless bounty hunter was replaced though with rumors circulating around of Boba Fett. You know, that guy who was barely in any scenes. Bo was an alleged badass, so to speak. I love him as much as an ex-guy, but I see what they're doing here. It's kind of like Darth Maul. He got punked. Let me get this straight. So this was set to be a Boba Fett game instead, and supposedly this nameless bounty hunter, this guy, at least I think is this guy, will be subsequently killed off to make way for Boba Fett. What? Why? Did you guys change your mind mid-production and literally just execute your own main guy when his services were no longer required? How very Empire of you.
No survivors. Straightforward.
I mean, he seemed like a nice guy, but back to the point. Well, either way, you were an ordinary guy with a lot of skills, just a
Simple man trying to make my way in the universe.
But this was subsequently cancelled also, followed by another failed attempt of yet another underworld-focused game, subsequently also cancelled. This game don't even have a name, but it was aimed at, quote-unquote, a broader experience that allows for variety and player agency, but was subsequently cancelled by EA, and subsequently went for their classic less variety and more loot box route instead. But hey, they nailed it with Star Wars The Fallen Order. I gotta give them that credit at least. Which almost didn't release, by the way. And thank the Force it did. So both of those bad boys cancelled by EA. Predictable. Next we have Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 3. A classic. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 3 was a cancelled follow-up on a series of Knights of the Old Republic games, also known as KOTOR, an RPG-styled single-player story-based game, set thousands of years before the events of the movies. It was said they had quite a bit of traction in it, wrote the story, but upon nearing its completion it hit a rock and subsequently sunk its spaceship. You know, cancelled. As a fan of the Knights of the Old Republic series, I love the story elements, the freedom of choice, the companions choosing your own destiny in the form of different endings. The freedom and creativity inspired a lot of my own fun ideas and my own characters, let alone the atmosphere itself. Nothing is spoken of the plot other than a main character named Narisha, whatever, and the artwork that follows. According to Chris Avallone, the team always intended to make a trilogy, kinda like the movies, always 3 there are. It is thus quoted saying, "The third game involved you, a player character, following where Revan went, and then taking the battle to the really ancient Sith Lords who are far more terrifying than the Darths that show up. These guys would be just monsters. These would have a level of power that was considerable, but at the same time you'd be able to dig more into their psychologies, and their personalities, their history, even how they dealt with the player, how they talk with the player, the different powers they cultivated and developed. They're the ancients, so they're not just ruling a star system, but swaths of the galaxy. So the places that you travel to, that you'd see, how they left their stamp on that world, or that solar system, or whatever collection of moons. You'd see how terrible that was. Part of that environment would tell a story about that. The Old Republic out there, which isn't get a chance to do it. And rumors floating around of its return. Sometimes they say it's returning or might happen. The team has expressed interest, but sometimes it's clear it will never happen. And well, suppose we got Battlefront 3 to look forward to. Well, with exceptionally evolved loot box deals. Not at all unlike the constant outpour of the Call of Duty games. Who needs creativity when you can just sell the same shit over and over again and repackage it, right? A fan-made team did try to make a KOTOR remake, and the promise of it was beautiful. The footage and everything, but instead it got cancelled as well. This is why we can't have nice things, and it kind of further accentuates how our ideas and creativity don't seem to matter, just money. It's all about the money. Having never happened, it's a shame and a missed opportunity given the sheer potential. Instead, we got Star Wars The Old Republic, the MMO. But that's besides the point. So, the last we have here, you remember the game Masters of Terras Kaze. This was a somewhat crappy rendition, yet a very nostalgic fighting game of the Star Wars universe, and I found it pretty unique and an interesting take. And its delightful combat system.
Versus 4. Ready? Fight!
takes me back also to the PS2 Star Wars Revenge of the Sith game. They were gonna attempt a new game similar to this, but all we got was this. Till it was subsequently also cancelled, but given the footage here, it looked pretty neat. At least as a skeleton. But alas, it never got past the naming stage, did it? So we got no fighting games. The closest you can imagine is Battlefront, officially. But unofficially, there are interesting ideas out there, like fan games as well, that indeed showcase the potential of what a Star Wars fighting game could be like. And if you ask me, let's think about that like
Cooking a fine meal. I don't do dinner service. Funny.
Let's try mixing that up with Soul Calibur. If you remember, it had Yoda, it had Vader.
With the Force, I flow.
Oh, and it had The Apprentice. I just remembered that show, by the way. That was so good. Not that one. That one. Classic. So anyway, it had The Apprentice. This Apprentice. Let's mix that up with an updated version of Revenge of the Sith type combat system. And it could go places. But alas, these are potentials that all fall short of the great and wonderful what could be.
Do not throw away your potential.
I will forever dream of a better world. A world where no promising games were cancelled forever. A world where they were either never cancelled or magically came back, more powerful than ever before. I'm looking at you, Prototype. They were out so long ago. So long ago. So long ago. If you like the video, feedback is always welcome. May the Force break your chains.
Also, there's some petitions if you want to sign any. La-di-da, ta-ta. May the Force be with you.